Well, thank you for choosing Boats and Fun. We're very happy you chose us. Now, we're going to spend the next few minutes to make sure you have a safe and fun time on the water. Get ready to have fun. Okay, during this training video, we're going to look at a few different things. Some of the things we're going to look at is first, we're going to look at how the fuel and the oil works on the boat. We're going to look at the cooling system, battery care, the gauges, how to understand the weather forecast and when you can go and when you can't go out on the water, docking and anchoring, documentation, all the papers and everything that you have to have with you, as well as all the safety requirements like life jackets, throwables, all this stuff. All right, a couple of things to remember when operating the boat. Number one is how you get everything going. The first thing you do is you go to the back and you turn on the battery switch. Second thing that you do, you tilt the engine down, all the way down to the bottom, to the water. Third thing, you gotta make sure that your safety lanyard is connected to the kill switch on the engine. Next thing you're gonna turn on the engine just like you do in a car. Now, if by any chance the engine is not starting, chances are you forgot to put that little safety lanyard on. The throttle works very simple. The throttle works is right on the side, and it works forward is going forward and backwards is going backwards. To the middle where it clicks in is neutral. Whenever you start the engine, you always want to make sure that it's also in neutral. And one very important thing, most of the engines that we have, the maximum recommended RPMs is 5,500. So the first thing you want to check is that the engine is in neutral, your kill switch is on, that your engine is all the way on the water, and then you can start the engine. Alright, the hardest thing to do when driving a boat is docking. Now, if you follow these very simple 3 rules that we have made up for you guys, it is a piece of cake. Number 1 rule that we have is to always arrive to the dock in neutral. So as you're coming into dock, you gotta always make sure you have the boat in neutral, never in gear going forward. Rule number 2 is to arrive as slow as possible. Now this is where the one that people look at me and they ask me, well, what do you mean by slow? And what I mean by slow is that you have to think that docking is like a very controlled crash. You have 2 hard objects coming against each other. So if you go the slower you want to go as fast as you want to crash into the dock or the other boat. So remember, super slow. And the third rule to remember is that it is not a car, so it's not gonna turn like a car does. So as you're coming into the dock, it does not matter if you're coming sideways perfectly straight. It doesn't matter. Just coming in very slowly and then have a person step off the boat, give them a rope and have them pull the boat in. The other thing, as you're coming in on the boat, a lot of people try to get it in perfect into the dock. That does not work very well. What you want to do is get the front of the boat into the dock, go, remember, as slow as possible, and then have a person grab a rope on the back and pull it in. That's gonna make it the simplest way to do it. So like we said before, you wanna go as slow as you can. Remember, you wanna go as slow as you want to crash into the dock. You always wanna have help docking, and you want to arrive in neutral. And you see, when you have a friend helping you, it's pretty easy. Bueno, ya está. Okay, the next part that we have is that we have anchoring. Now we know lots of you guys want to go to the beach. Now, big rule that is very different if you boated before in lakes or anywhere else is that in this area you cannot beach the boat. Here, so you have an idea, this is the #1 reason why boats sink is because of beaching them. So it's very important that if you remember one thing from this whole lesson is to not beach the boat. The reason for this is that if you bring it to the beach too close, where the waves are starting to build up, and even if they don't look like they're building up, they could, and what's going to happen is those waves can go over the back of the boat, or they could push the boat sideways and eventually fill it with water and sink it. And this can happen very quickly. So remember this one thing, no beaching the boat. If you do want to go to the beach, that is not a problem, as long as you do not beach the boat, like we said 100 times. Now, what you want to do is you want to anchor the boat. Now, when you anchor the boat, you want to anchor where there's at least 3 to 4 feet of water. And this is to allow for tide changes. Now, whenever you anchor the boat, you want to anchor from the front of the boat, never the sides, never the back. And the anchors that you guys have on our boats, they're called sand anchors. Sand anchors work in an angle. This angle is 7 times the amount of rope to the depth of the water. So let me explain how this works. So if you have 3 feet of water, you gotta give it at least 21 feet of rope. The reason for this is as the angle starts shrinking, the anchor is meant to let go. So as the anchor, imagine this is the anchor right here at the bottom, and here's the boat. As you start shrinking this angle, the anchor just lets go to make it easy on you guys. So it's very, very important that you give it those 7 times the amount of rope to the depth of the water. Now, another thing to remember here, we had one customer a while ago that came in one day on the afternoon ready to return the boat, very, very angry. And we asked, what's going on? And she told us one thing, she told us dead serious on the end, she said, you never told us to tie the other end of the anchor. So, hopefully you laughed like we did, and she did not take it very well when we laughed. Now, so with that said, it is very important that you remember whenever you count those 7 times the depth of the water, you tie that rope to the very front of the boat again. And one last thing to remember whenever you anchor the boat is that if you walk away, make sure you keep an eye on the boat the whole time. Because as the tides, like we say, can change a lot here, and you know, if the tide starts going up, that angle is going to start letting go and the boat is slowly going to start to drift away. Now, if you keep an eye on it, you're going to notice that it moved a little bit before it goes anywhere. But if you walk away for 4 hours and you come back, the boat might not be there. So it's very important that whenever you anchor, you keep an eye on the boat. Alright, another very important thing in boating in this area is weather. Weather is 2 important issues with weather. Number 1 is wind, and the second one are thunderstorms. I don't know if you have noticed here, but in Florida we have thunderstorms almost every day. So we'll talk about that in a second. The first one is wind. Wind, the important thing with wind is that you look ahead and you check the forecast before you go in the morning. If there's more than 15 to 20 miles an hour, there's a small craft advisory. We check this every morning before letting anybody go. Now, if you're getting the keys and the GPS the day before, you have it for a couple of days, you have to make sure you check that there is not a small craft advisory before leaving your dock or your house before you're going out on the water. The second thing that we have is thunderstorms. Thunderstorms, you guys probably noticed every single day, especially in summer in Florida, we have a small thunderstorm. Usually what happens in between half an hour to an hour, it's clear and it's back to a beautiful Florida day. Now, we say if you see the storm coming, head to the closest dock, the closest marina, sit down, let it pass by. Like we say, half an hour to an hour, it's going to be back beautiful. Now, if by any chance you're still driving the boat, you're fishing, life is going awesome, you're not worrying, you see a thunderstorm over there, but you're like, that's never going to come to us. And all of a sudden you have these huge storms on top of you guys. That's kind of not really fun. So you have a couple important things to remember to do if that happens. Number 1, if you see the big storm coming, make sure everybody puts life jackets on. Number 2, follow your GPS and go back home. Don't try to go as fast as you can, because if you're trying to go as fast as you can and you're not paying attention to where you're going, you could get stuck in a sandbar in the middle of a storm, and that's just no fun. And third thing is that if you start seeing lightning around, you have these big metal bars, don't be holding on to those.
One way to avoid disaster is by watching the weather. Weather can change suddenly and create unexpected situations for boat operators. Even meteorologists have trouble predicting changes in the weather, so stay alert. If you get caught in severe weather, check your PFD to be sure it's properly fastened. Reduce speed, but keep enough power to maintain headway and steering. Have your passengers sit on the floor close to the center line for their own safety and to make the boat more stable. If there's lightning, disconnect all electrical equipment and stay clear of metal objects. If possible, head for the nearest shore that's safe to approach. Point your bow into the waves at a 45-degree angle. Personal watercraft should head directly into the waves.
Alright, one thing that you will notice when you look at the charts and everything is that it's very shallow in this, and basically the whole west coast of Florida, it's very shallow waters. So one important thing is to pay attention to your charts, your GPS, and know your tide changes. If you pay attention to this, you're probably not going to have any problems whatsoever. Now, sometimes it happens that you're driving along, you're having an awesome time, and you see dolphins. And everybody, you have the kids there, your wife, everybody's here, and you're like, oh, let's go follow the dolphins. You turn right over, you're going all good, life is great, and all of a sudden you go, blah, 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 puff. And you look around and you're like, oh no, I ran out of the water. So, if this happens to you, it's very important you follow these few simple rules and you're gonna get yourself out of there without a problem. Number one is tilt the engine up, but not out of the water, as the whole propeller has to be underwater for the cooling system to work. So tilt that up, but remember, just underneath the water. And then back yourself out the same way you came in. Don't try to do a circle around because you don't know what's on either way, but you know you made it in through that way. Now, if you tilt it up and that's still not working, you're still digging either the sand or the grasses, turn it off, tilt it all the way out, and this is the part where we all jump off the boat and we push it back out to deeper water. One important thing to remember is that if you find yourself running on shallow water, not necessarily stuck, but you find yourself on shallow water where there's seagrass, don't try running through there. Because the seagrass is a very important part of nature for this area. It helps the fish, helps the manatees, helps the dolphins, helps everybody. So you have to make sure you don't run through those. And if you do, you're subject to a big ticket and you don't want one of those. Okay. Now, when talking about navigation, there's 3 aids of navigation we're going to talk about. Number 1 is the charts. Number 2 is the markers in the water. And number 3, we're going to talk about the GPS. Okay, so when talking about markers, we have basically 2 markers. First, we have red markers, which are always triangles, and then we have green markers, which are always squares. Basically, what the red and the green markers mark is the edges, the 2 edges of the channels. Now, with the markers, we also have 3 rules. And we're going to talk about this in detail. Rule number 1 is red right returning. And that happens when coming in and out of ports. Rule number 2 is red right north. And this happens on the intercoastal waterway. And rule number 3 is red right sea. And this happens in reverse whenever you're going towards sea.
Buoys and markers are the traffic signs of the waterways. These navigation aids also identify dangerous or restricted areas. They give directions and information. On the water, you'll encounter 2 types of marking systems. Regulatory markers tell you how to behave. They're enforced by law. Lateral markers mark safe water areas. Regulatory markers use simple shapes to help you understand their meaning, even from a distance. A diamond shape with a cross means keep out. You'll see these around areas where boats are not allowed, such as swimming areas or industrial sites. A circle marks a controlled area, such as a no-wake zone. An open diamond means danger, such as a shallow area, rocks or stumps. Lateral markers are special channel buoys. They define the lateral system of navigation on inland waterways. Red right returning is a phrase used in this situation. It means the red markers, whether they are buoys or lights, will always be on your right when you return to port or head upstream. If you're traveling downstream or leaving port, green will be on your right.
What that means is that the red marker is on the right side of the boat whenever you're entering a port. And a port can be a marina, it could be an island like Cabbage Key, it could be North Captiva, basically anywhere where you come in to dock the boat and you see markers. And that could also be a canal, coming into a canal to a city. So remember, as you're coming into a port, the red marker is on the right side, so red right returning. And obviously, with that said, whenever you're leaving the port, you gotta remember that the red marker is on the left side of the boat. Okay, rule number 2 involves the intercoastal waterway. So you guys understand the intercoastal waterway is basically like a highway that goes all the way around the east coast of the United States, basically starting from New York and going all the way around Florida and all the way to Mexico.
The Intracoastal Waterway, or ICW, is a chain of local channels linked together to provide an inland passage on the Gulf and Atlantic coasts. Channels that are a part of the ICW are identified by yellow symbols on channel buoys and markers. If you're following the ICW clockwise from New Jersey, any marker displaying a yellow triangle should be passed by keeping it on the starboard or right side of the boat. Any marker displaying a yellow square should be passed by keeping it on the port or left side of the boat.
So, the rule on the Intercoastal is that the red marker is always towards the side of the mainland, and the green marker is towards the ocean. Now, to put this a little easier to understand, in our side on the west coast of Florida, to make it simple, the red marker is on the right side of the boat whenever you're going north on the Intercoastal. So, let me repeat that. The red marker is on the right side of the boat whenever you're going north on the Intercoastal waterway. Rule number 3 involves rivers. And this is basically any river in the United States. The rule is basically it's red right sea, which means that the red mark is on the right side of the boat whenever you're going towards sea or down river. So let me repeat this one more time. Whenever you're on the river going down towards the sea, the red marker is on the right side. So the rule is red right sea. Another important thing with aids and navigations and markers is that somewhere you guys are going to see markers that say no wake, idle speed, and manatee zone. They all mean the same exact thing. What that means is that you have to go slow enough that if you look at the back of your boat, there's no white water behind the boat. A couple of important rules with this is that also, even if you don't see the markers within 200 yards of any shore, you have to go idle speed. Okay, here you guys can see this chart is basically the whole area where we're at. You can see on the very right side is the mainland, followed by the Pine Islands, the next big island, and then we have all the Berry Islands before the Gulf of Mexico. In between the islands and the mainland is what we call the Intercoastal. Basically, your whole navigation area where you can go is from the south end of Gasparilla Island at the top to the south end of Sanibel at the bottom. Okay, when you look at this chart, this is basically where all your charts are going to look like. Everything you're going to use on your GPS or the charts here are going to look basically like this chart right here. So if you look at it, you have, to start, you have a whole bunch of waters, you have the islands, and you have a whole bunch of numbers all over the place. Those numbers that you see around is the depth of the water. And then when you look at the water, you have 3 different colors. You have white water, blue water, and green water. When we look at white water, we say white water is awesome water, it's great water. It's basically that is 6 feet or deeper. So whenever you're in white water, you have to worry about anything. Life is good. Then we have blue water. Blue water is anything from half a foot of water to 6 feet of water. So we call this dangerous water. Be careful, look ahead, because it's very important that you look ahead to see how much water is coming. Very important thing to remember that most of our boats require at least 3.5 to 4 feet of water. So remember, less than 4 feet or 3.5 feet, you don't want to go in there, you can get yourself in trouble. And then we have green water. Green water is anything less than half a foot. So it's very important you do not go on green water. Now, if you're in between markers, so in between a red and a green marker and you're coming in, don't worry if the water is green or blue as long as you're in between the markers. Also, keep an eye always to where you're going, because as you can see right here, you can see that I can go from 27 feet on white water just to 1 foot or half a foot on blue water. So it's very important that you look ahead to see what's coming. Alright, so now we're going to talk about the GPS. First thing with the GPS, you're going to notice they have this very nice cover. First thing you want to do is you want to take the cover off and make sure you put the cover in a safe place. Good place to put it is usually inside the hatch right there. Alright, so now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to plug it in. If we look at the back of the GPS, it has the plug. We want to line up the arrow with the very top of the GPS. And once it's in, we want to twist it until it clicks in. If you go too far, it's just going to unclick. And you want to line it up into the bracket and put it in. Alright, so now we're going to learn how to use the GPS. First, to turn it on, we're going to press and hold the power button right here. Once it turns on, the first thing that's going to come up is this little Garmin liability thing. It's going to let us know, of course, if anything happens to us, it's not Garmin's fault. So the first thing we have to do is we're going to have to agree to that when that pops up. Now, another thing that you will notice as this loads is that this is not a touchscreen. So everything happens on these few buttons over here. And most of the time the GPS tells you what you have to do. So here's a liability thing, and it tells you to agree, you have to press the button select. So you gotta click select. Alright, so here we come in, this is the main menu. Now, whenever you press the button home, it's going to bring you back to this menu. And here you'll notice we have charts, sonar, charts and sonar, where to, and information. First thing we're going to look at is the information. So we're going to select that, and here we want to look at tides and currents. And we're going to select that again. Now here, what we want to look at is the tides. Now on lights, the first thing that pops up is a list of a whole bunch of places. Always at the very top is the closest place to you. The tide information closest to where you are, and then it has getting a little farther away. So right now we're North Captiva and Redfish Pass is the closest to us, and then they have an arrow from Captiva, Pine Island, Boca Grande. They have them from all over the place. But at the top is the closest one to us, so we're gonna select that one. Here what we get is here's basically the tide chart. So when you look at it, to understand the tide chart, you see here is how high the tide goes, how low, the time of the day. This is 12 AM, 4 AM, 8 AM, 12 noon, 4 PM, well, basically the whole day, and how high the water gets. Now, here you see how it says 1.9 and the bottom says 0.3. Basically what this means is at 0, right now we're not seeing 0. So, but at 0, so a little bit below this is what all the charts give you the numbers at. So if the charts tell you it's 3 feet deep, it's 3 feet deep when it's 0 over here. So right now basically what this is telling us that at 11:08 the tide is 1.8 feet above what all the charts tell you. So if we scroll around with the arrows, we can scroll and look at anywhere. So let's look at like 5 PM. Let's say you're out on the boat, you're coming back at 5, so let's look down. And when we look at 5, it tells us, let's see, 5:02. 5:02 is the lowest tide for today, is 0.3. Now another thing to remember is whatever number this gives you, the rule of thumb is to divide it by 2. So if it tells you, like right now it's 0.3 feet, imagine it's really about 0.15 above what all the charts say. And if we go up, again, let's see, like for example over here it tells us 1 foot up at 8, really imagine it's half a foot up. So and that's basically to keep into account the current and all the extra, the wind and all that stuff to make it much more accurate. So next thing, let's click on home, and that's going to bring us back to the very beginning of GPS. So when we click on charts, click select, and now we have navigation charts, fishing charts, we have a whole bunch of stuff. The ones you're going to use are the navigation charts. Click on select, and now basically here's what you have. You have a bunch of charts, you have your boat, a couple of things around the screen you're going to see your GPS speed, your heading, your position where you are, and your depth according to the sonar. Next thing you have is here's your zoom. Like we said before, this is basically the scale of the chart. So a good zoom to keep, we usually say is between 120 and 200 feet. To zoom in and zoom out, you have the plus and the minus buttons right here. So right now we're going to zoom out a little bit, so you guys can see. Alright, when we zoom out, you get to see there's all kinds of gibberish in there, so it's easier to capture a little bit more zoomed in. The other thing that we do is with the arrows, we can scroll around and look at different stuff. So let's scroll around. And let's come out somewhere out here. If you look at this, you have, just like in the regular charts, we have the, let's see, let's come right up here. All these lines that you see in here, you're probably not going to see on GPS. This is basically where this specific boat has been since the last time we reset it. So it's been all over the place. Now, what you can see is we have white waters, blue water, and green water. That means again, the green water is anywhere less than half a foot. So you want to try to stay away from the green water. Blue water can be anything from half a foot to about 6 feet of water. So you can see, for example, right here we have 3.9, 4.9, we have a bunch of different stuff. And the white water is anything deeper than 6 feet. So usually if you stay in white water, you're good to go. Now, see, once we start scrolling around, your boat is no longer locked to the middle of the screen. So we can be driving around and doing our own thing. And the boat, it's going to be somewhere out here doing its own thing while we're looking. The secret to going back to the boat is click on the button that says menu, and here this pops up. At the very top it says stop panning. So select that, and that's going to bring you right back to the boat. Now remember, zoom level, right now we're at 500, that's a little bit too far, because if you look at the size of the boat, if we zoom out, even to 0.2 miles, it looks the same. We zoom in to a 120 feet. It still looks the same, but the charts change, so it's much more accurate to keep it zoomed in. Alright, next thing we're going to look at is, if we click on home again, brings us back to the beginning. And we're going to scroll down to where to. Where to, here we have waypoints, routes, tracks, we have a whole bunch of stuff. What you want here, you want routes. When you select routes, we get a whole bunch of routes to different places. Now, depending on the GPS, you can scroll up and down here, and sometimes it says next page, or for example, this one says to change pages, click plus and minus. So
so plus minus. So here what you have is basically where it says NC means North Captiva, and you have North Captiva to different places. North Captiva to Pine Island, North Captiva to Co-op, North Captiva to Cayo Costa. Cab means Cabbage Key, so you basically have to read it and you get a pretty good idea where it is. PL means Pine Island. So let's say right now we're in North Captiva and we want to go to Cayo Costa. So let's search for one that says North Captiva Cayo Costa. So here we have North Captiva Cayo Costa. We're gonna, to open that one, we're gonna click on select, and then here's where it asks us. It says edit route, delete, or navigate to. We want to scroll down to navigate to. Select that one and then ask you forwards or backwards or offset. Never use offset. Forwards or backwards. Basically, if on the words it said if it said North Captiva to Cayo Costa and you're North Captiva going to Cayo Costa, that's forward. And if you wanted to come back, you're gonna click it on backwards. So it's that simple. So we click select and check out what it did. It draws this line right here. And all you have to do is basically keep the boat on top of the line. And this line is gonna take us out through everything. So if we scroll around, you're gonna see it's gonna take us through every turn, through everything. And it's gonna take us all the way out. And it's going to take us all the way to Cayo Costa. So it's as simple as it gets. All you have to do is keep the boat on top of this line. Now remember, now that I scrolled around, the secret to go back to the boat was click on menu, select stop panning, and that brings us right back to the beginning. So it's that simple to use the route. Now a couple important things to remember with the routes is that depending on the day, GPS can either be GPS can be dead on or it could be a few feet off. So it's very important that if you see two markers, you stay in between the markers, because the line could be dead on, it could be a little bit off. Last thing that you could want to do is, let's say you don't want to see these lines anymore. So the secret to not seeing the line anymore, the navigation and all this extra stuff, is click on menu and then you have stop navigating. So select stop navigating and that erases the line. Alright, so that's the GPS. If you guys have any questions, you can let us know. So let's do a quick review here. So you have charts, navigation charts, that brings you to the beginning. Menu always opens the menu or goes back. You see right here to go back, it says click on menu, and that brings us back. Home always brings you back to the beginning. You scroll down to information, you can select that, and then we have tides and currents, select. We have tides, always at the very top is the information where you are, and that shows you the tides. Home again brings us to the beginning, and then you have where to, select that. Then we have routes, that's what we're going to use, and then here you have all the lists. So if we were in, for example, here it says St. James City to North Captiva. So let's say we're in North Captiva and we want to go to St. James City. So we're going to select that one, and then we're going to scroll down to navigate to, and now we want to go backwards to go to St. James. So select that, and that's going to draw the line. Alright, excellent. Home, charts, and then to erase the charts we're going to click on menu, stop navigating.
Alright, now talking about typical bad things that happen to the boats and how to avoid them. Very simple it is to not hurt anything on the boat. Number one thing that people break or bend or different stuff is the propeller. The simplest and easiest way to not hurt the propeller at all is to stay away from shallow water. And if by any chance you know you're going to be going through shallow water because you're fishing or something, that's no problem. Just go super slow. Chances are if you go slow, nothing is really going to happen. So another thing is whenever you guys get the boat, we're going to check the state of the propeller and we're going to write it down. So make sure you pay attention to that. The second thing that typically happens to the boat is that the canvas on the boats get broken. 99% of the times that these things get broken is that it happens that you go kind of a little bit too fast and you run yourself into the mangroves. If that happens to you, just remember, typically if you just push yourself out of those mangroves, nothing really is going to happen. Sometimes when we break those is that you're going a little bit too fast and you try to run yourself out of the mangroves. So remember, if you get run into the mangroves, basically push yourself out of there, don't try to run it. And last is if there is a lot of wind. If there is a lot of wind going on and you're trying to go as fast as the boat goes, these things turn, the canopies turn into like a big parachute. So it's very important that you turn it, you basically unclip it from the front end and you just clip it all the way down to the back. And then just wrap around the top, that way it's not flapping all over the place. And the third thing to remember is the third thing that typically happens to the boats is damage to the fiberglass or dents on the rubber. 99% of the time that happens is when docking. So remember 3 simple things when docking. 1, always arrive in neutral. 2, arrive as slow as humanly possible. Remember, you want to arrive as fast as you want to crash. So the slower the better. And number 3 is to always have help docking.